Hey everyone, welcome to the cheating. Imagine this. It's a rainy night. You're sitting in your car, heart pounding, watching the woman you vowed to love forever walk into a hotel with another man. Your mind screams denial, but your gut already knows the truth. And then, as you step into that dimly lit room, everything you believed in shatters before your eyes. But betrayal isn't just about pain, it's about what comes next. How do you move forward when the person you trusted most stabs you in the back? Do you walk away quietly, or do you make them pay? Tonight's story is one of shocking betrayal, ruthless revenge, and the moment one man decided to take control of his own fate. Get ready, because this one is brutal. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive into this story. The rain hammered down in thick sheets, drowning the city in a relentless downpour. Water streamed down the windshield of my car, distorting the neon signs that flickered in the night. My breath came in slow, shallow gulps as I stared at the entrance of the sleek, high-rise hotel downtown, the same one Evelyn had walked into minutes ago. With him, my wife, the woman I had built a life with, the mother of my son, the love of my goddamn life. Gone. Disappearing into a world I was never meant to see. I should have left. I should have driven away, saved myself the agony of witnessing whatever was about to unfold. But I couldn't. Not after what I had already seen. The kiss. The way her fingers had tangled into his hair. The way she had looked at him, not with guilt, not with hesitation, but with longing. That was what had shattered me the most. She wanted him, and I needed to know just how deep that betrayal went. With my heart slamming against my ribs, I yanked open the car door, stepping into the storm. The icy rain drenched my clothes instantly, but I barely felt it. My mind was a haze of anger, disbelief, and something far darker curling inside me like a sickness I couldn't shake. I pushed through the glass entrance, my shoes squeaking against the marble floor. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I strode past, my eyes scanning the gilded interior. The elevators gleamed under the golden light, their mirrored doors reflecting the face of a man I barely recognized. My jaw clenched, my eyes burned, my breath came out ragged. Then I saw it. The glowing numbers above the elevator panel. Floor 23. The same floor I had seen in Evelyn's recent text messages. A quick glance at her phone last week had given me enough to suspect something was wrong. I had seen a message from an unsaved number. Room 2309. Can't wait to feel you again. At the time, I had convinced myself it was a misunderstanding, that it couldn't be what I thought it was, that my wife would never... The ding of the elevator shattered my thoughts. The doors slid open. I stepped inside, feeling my pulse throb beneath my skin as I pressed the button for the 23rd floor. Each second felt like a lifetime. When the doors opened, I was met with a long, carpeted hallway. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and polished wood, but underneath it, something else lingered. Something unmistakable. Sex. My stomach turned. I moved forward, my footsteps muted by the plush carpet, my fists clenching so tightly my nails dug into my palms. The door numbers passed by in a blur until I reached it. 2309. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle, half hoping it would be locked, half praying it wouldn't be. If it was locked, I would have time to rethink, to leave, to pretend none of this was happening. But it wasn't locked. It swung open at the slightest push. And inside, my world came crashing down. Evelyn was there. My wife. My beautiful, perfect wife. Completely naked. She was on top of him, straddling his lap, her hands gripping his shoulders, her head thrown back in pleasure. Her skin glowed under the dim hotel lighting, damp with sweat, her hair a wild mess around her flushed face. And him, he was beneath her, his hands gripping her hips, his mouth moving across her chest, his fingers digging into her bare skin like he had every right to touch what was mine. The sounds they made, The moans, the whispers, the gasps of pleasure, the wet, rhythmic slap of their bodies colliding in perfect harmony. Everything blurred, the room tilted. My vision darkened at the edges as something animalistic, something primal, something I didn't recognize took hold of me. I had walked in on my wife fucking another man. Not hesitantly, not regretfully, not in a moment of weakness, but passionately, eagerly, like she had done this 100 times before. And worst of all, she hadn't even noticed me yet. They were too lost in each other, too caught up in the pleasure, too deep in their own sick, twisted world to realize that the man they were betraying had just walked into the room. I stood frozen, my breath locked in my chest, my mind refusing to process the scene in front of me. Then Evelyn's eyes flickered open. At first, she didn't register it. She was still lost in the moment, her lips parted, her body writhing against him. But then her gaze settled on me. And in that instant, I saw it. The sheer, unfiltered horror. Her body stiffened, her breath hitched, her mouth opened, but no words came out. She scrambled off him so fast that she tripped over the sheets, falling to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Her hands clutched at her chest, desperately trying to cover herself, as if there was anything left to hide. "Isaac," her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I can explain." Explain. She wanted to explain. I laughed. A broken, hollow sound that wasn't even human. The man, him, was scrambling too, yanking the sheets up to cover himself, his eyes wide with fear. I didn't even know his name, but I didn't need to. He was nobody. She was the one who had destroyed me. My vision blurred with something hot and suffocating, but I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to feel this moment, because I would never be the same after it. Evelyn was crying now, her hands reaching for me, but I took a step back. The pain was unbearable. The betrayal? Unforgivable. But what came next? That was up to me. I don't remember leaving the hotel room. 1 second, I was standing there, drowning in the unbearable sight of my naked wife scrambling to cover herself. The next, I was in the elevator, staring at my own reflection in the mirrored walls. A man I didn't recognize stared back at me. My face was pale, my pupils blown wide. My lips were parted slightly, as if I had been gasping for air but had forgotten how to breathe. The moment replayed in my head on an endless loop. Evelyn, naked, writhing, moaning. Not for me. For him. I pressed my hands against my temples, squeezing my eyes shut. But the images wouldn't stop. The sounds wouldn't stop. The betrayal seeped into my bones, filling every crack in my soul, drowning out every ounce of rationality left inside me. The elevator dinged, and suddenly I was back in the lobby, surrounded by people who had no idea my entire world had just collapsed. The night was still heavy with rain when I stepped outside, but I didn't care. My clothes were already soaked, my skin numb from more than just the cold. I drove aimlessly for hours, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, my jaw locked so tightly it ached. How long had it been going on? I thought back to the past few months, the late nights, the sudden distance, the extra time at work. I had been such a fool. Was it the first time tonight? Number. The way she moved with him, the way she clung to him, the way they fit together so seamlessly, that was not the fumbling passion of a one-time mistake. That was practiced. That was routine. She had been fucking him for a long time. My stomach twisted violently. I pulled into an empty parking lot and killed the engine. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, my breathing shallow, erratic. I tried to feel sadness. I wanted to break down, to cry, to mourn the death of my marriage. But there was nothing. Nothing but a deep, festering rage curling inside me like a vengeful serpent, tightening around my ribs, squeezing the oxygen from my lungs. She had humiliated me. She had thrown away everything we had built together for what? A cheap affair? A goddamn nobody? And she thought she could explain? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Number. There was no explanation. There was no forgiveness. There was no turning back. She had made her choice. Now I would make mine. The sun was rising by the time I returned home. My body was exhausted, my mind raw, but sleep was out of the question. As I stepped inside, the house was eerily silent. The warmth it once held was gone, replaced by a suffocating emptiness that made my skin crawl. Everything here reminded me of her. The framed photos on the wall, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air, the coffee cup she had left in the sink that morning, completely unaware that by the end of the day, our marriage would be over. I walked into our bedroom. No, my bedroom. She didn't belong here anymore. The bed was perfectly made, the sheets still smelling of us, of the life we had once shared. My stomach churned as I thought about how many nights she had come home from him, showered in this bathroom, climbed into this bed beside me, and kissed me goodnight with the same lips that had been wrapped around him. I punched the wall so hard my knuckles split open. Blood dripped onto the hardwood floor, but I barely felt it. I needed to destroy something. I ripped the sheets off the bed, throwing them across the room. The lamp followed. Then the framed wedding photo on the nightstand. The glass shattered as it hit the floor, the pieces scattering like the remains of the life I had thought was unbreakable. My phone vibrated. I didn't have to look to know it was her. She had been calling all night, texting, begging. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. One missed call, then another, and another. Finally, a message. Isaac, please. I'm sorry. Please come home. We need to talk. A cold smile curled at the corners of my lips. We need to talk. Oh, we'll talk. But not in the way she wanted. She thought this was salvageable. She thought she could cry, apologize, say it was a mistake, and I would take her back like a pathetic, spineless man. She had no idea what was coming. I stared at my reflection in the cracked wedding photo on the floor. I had been weak before, blind, naive, foolish, but not anymore. If Evelyn thought she could walk away from this without consequences, she was dead wrong. For the next 3 days, I ignored her completely. She called. I let it ring. She texted. I left her on read. She came home. I left before she could. I let her stew in it. Let her wonder what I was thinking, what I was planning. And, oh, I was planning. She had humiliated me. Now, I would return the favor. The first step was finding out everything I could about him. His name was Nathan Pierce, a real estate broker, divorced, no kids. I spent hours digging through his life, his career, his reputation, and then I found it. The perfect way in. Nathan had a high-profile client dinner coming up, hosted by none other than his firm, a lavish, high-stakes event where the wrong move could ruin his career. And Evelyn? She was going with him. My fingers tightened around my phone as I stared at the email confirmation I had found in her inbox. They were not just having an affair. They were about to go public. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. Perfect. If Evelyn thought she could humiliate me in the shadows, then I would drag her into the light. I had waited long enough. It was time for revenge. The night of the gala had finally arrived. The Grand Sterling Hotel loomed in front of me, a towering beacon of wealth and power, draped in golden lights that flickered against the night sky. Tonight, the city's elite had gathered for an evening of celebration, a networking event for high-profile real estate investors and brokers. An event he could not afford to screw up. An event she would never forget. I adjusted my tuxedo in the reflection of my car window, straightening the crisp black tie as my pulse throbbed beneath my skin. Every detail had been meticulously planned, every step calculated. This wasn't just revenge, This was retribution. Evelyn and Nathan thought they had won. They thought I would fade into the background, too broken to fight back. They had no idea I was about to burn their entire world to the ground. I walked toward the grand entrance, my steps slow, deliberate. The valet greeted me with a nod, completely unaware that I was carrying a storm inside me, one that was about to shatter everything. The ballroom was a masterpiece of luxury. High ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers, sleek marble floors polished to a mirror shine, and an air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and champagne. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits clinked glasses, exchanging smiles and handshakes, oblivious to the chaos I was about to unleash. And then I saw them. Nathan stood at the center of the room, charming and confident, surrounded by wealthy investors hanging onto his every word. He exuded power, effortlessly selling his charisma, completely unaware that tonight I owned him. And Evelyn, she was draped in a deep red gown, the fabric clinging to her curves, her diamond earrings catching the light as she laughed at something he said. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, a touch so familiar, so intimate, it made my blood turn to ice. I clenched my fists, but I didn't let the anger consume me. Not yet. I had something far better planned. I moved through the crowd, weaving between groups of people until I reached a table near the stage. From here, I had the perfect vantage point. And then, with a calm, steady breath, I sent the signal. It started with the screens. The massive LED screens that adorned the ballroom, meant to display elegant company logos and promotional videos. One by one, they flickered. The guests barely noticed at first, too engrossed in their conversations, their cocktails, their superficial pleasantries, until the screens changed, until the images appeared, until the air shifted, and then silence. A suffocating, unbearable silence as the entire room froze. On every screen, projected in high definition for hundreds of people to see, was Evelyn and Nathan. Not at dinner, not holding hands, not exchanging stolen glances. Fucking. Raw, unfiltered, caught in the act in that dimly lit hotel room. The footage I had recorded the night I found them. Every moan, every touch, every gasp of pleasure, played out in front of everyone. The collective gasp of the crowd was deafening. People covered their mouths. Some turned away in second-hand embarrassment. Others stared, transfixed by the sheer brutality of what they were witnessing. Nathan went pale, his confident facade crumbling in an instant. His investors, his clients, his entire goddamn career shattered in the blink of an eye. But the worst part? His downfall had just begun. I could hear the murmurs spreading through the room, growing louder, angrier. Nathan wasn't just any real estate broker. He was the face of a multi-million-dollar investment firm, a company that thrived on trust, on professionalism, on a clean public image. And now, he had single-handedly turned the firm into a scandal. I watched as Walter Greaves, one of the firm's most powerful investors, turned to a group of executives, his face livid. "This is unacceptable," he spat. "We can't be associated with this. Do you know how many clients we'll lose?" One of the board members nodded. "If this hits the media, we're done. We need to sever ties. Now." That was all it took. Nathan tried to salvage what little dignity he had left, stepping toward them, his voice trembling. "Walter, I can explain," but Walter was already shaking his head. "Explain what? That you thought you could mix business with personal stupidity and not get caught? That you could humiliate this company in front of our biggest clients? I didn't know." "That's the problem, Nathan. You're reckless. You always have been." Walter turned, his voice sharp as a knife. "Get him out of here!" Nathan froze. "No," he stammered, his hands raised in desperation. "Please, just let me." Strong hands clamped around his arms. Security moved in. Nathan struggled, but he didn't matter anymore. He had gone from powerful executive to disgraced fool in a matter of minutes. "Get your hands off me!" he barked, his voice desperate now. I'll fix this. I can fix this. But there was nothing left to fix. As he was dragged toward the exit, I caught a glimpse of his face. Pure, unfiltered panic. His entire empire had crumbled, and I had done it with a single push of a button. Evelyn screamed, "Not for him. For me." She ran toward me, her eyes wild with terror. "Isaac, please, tell them to stop." I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. I just watched as the man she destroyed our marriage for was thrown out like garbage. By the time security reached the doors, reporters were already waiting. I had made sure of that. The moment the scandal hit the screens, I had sent an anonymous tip to every major news outlet in the city. The cameras flashed. The microphones were shoved in his face. "Nathan, what do you have to say about the scandal? Did you know she was married? How long has this been going on?" Nathan tried to cover his face, but it was too late. His life was over. And as the doors slammed shut behind him, I finally turned back to Evelyn. She was shaking. Tears streamed down her face, her makeup smudged, her entire body trembling in horror. "Isaac," she choked out. Why would you do this?" Why? I let the question hang between us, let the weight of her betrayal, her lies, her utter disregard for me sink into the silence. Then, finally, I smiled, because I wanted you to feel what it's like to lose everything. And just like that, I walked away. After the scandal, Evelyn disappeared. At first, I thought she was just avoiding the inevitable, that she would come home, try to explain, beg for another chance. But days passed, and she never did. Her closet remained half empty. Her perfume lingered in the air like a ghost, but she was gone. I should have felt relieved. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken everything from her the way she had taken everything from me. But then I saw Jack and Lucy. Our children. Jack kept asking when his mother would come home. Lucy, barely old enough to understand, cried at night, clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispering for Mommy. I had been so consumed by my own pain that I had forgotten about theirs. For weeks, I tried to track Evelyn down. I called her friends, checked her usual spots. Nothing. It was as if she had vanished off the face of the earth. And then, one night, I found her. Or rather, she found me. She was waiting outside our house, her eyes sunken, her face gaunt. She looked nothing like the woman I had married. Nothing like the woman who had destroyed me. "Isaac," she whispered, "please, can we talk?" I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have turned my back and walked away. But I didn't. Because as much as I hated her, as much as I wanted to erase her from my life, I had loved her once. And part of me, the part that still wanted to believe she could change. We talked for hours. She said she was sorry, that she had made a mistake, that she had been lost, confused, stupid. She begged me to reconsider, for the sake of our children. For a fleeting moment, I considered it. But then I saw it. The way her hands trembled when she spoke. The way her eyes darted, filled with secrets she wasn't willing to share. I knew. She hadn't let him go. Nathan. Even after everything, she was still tied to him. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about our family. This wasn't about making things right. This was about her not wanting to face the consequences of her choices. And I refused to let my children be caught in the wreckage any longer. The next day, I filed for divorce. I fought for full custody, and I won. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because she had made her choice, and I had made mine. It took time, but I built a new life for us. A life where my children felt safe, where I could be a father, even if I could never replace what they had lost. And one day, I realized something. I had spent so much time seeking revenge, so much time trying to make Evelyn suffer, that I had forgotten what really mattered. Family, healing, letting go. So I did. I let go of the pain, of the betrayal, of the need to destroy her further. I focused on what I had left. My children, my future, myself, and for the first time in a long time, I finally felt free.